The European Union is discussing how to use frozen Russian assets to secure new financing for Ukraine. But the political and legal issue is far from resolved, and Belgium is at the center of the dispute. Following the adoption of the 19th package of sanctions against Moscow, a plan was developed that tasked the European Commission with establishing the legal basis for a credit line of approximately $140 billion to Kiev, guaranteed by Russian public assets frozen since March 2022. A significant portion of these funds, approximately $185 billion, is held at Euroclear, the major Brussels-based financial clearinghouse, whose international reputation depends precisely on its respect for neutrality and the rules governing the treatment of securities in custody. Until now, the EU had chosen a prudent path, not to touch Russian capital, but to use only the profits generated by those funds, interest and excess profits, to support Ukraine. The rationale was that these proceeds are not sovereign property in the strict sense, unlike the original capital, and therefore can be redirected without directly violating the principle of sovereign immunity of states. The new project, however, goes much further, stipulating that the restitution of Russian capital would be conditional on Moscow's future willingness to pay war reparations to Kiev. In essence, this would be a disguised expropriation, with the risk of triggering a wave of international litigation, compensation claims, and a severe blow to Europe's credibility as a safe and predictable financial center. This is where Belgium comes in, fearing it would find itself on the front lines of potential lawsuits and compensation claims as the country where Euroclear is headquartered. Prime Minister Bart de Wever has therefore set 3 specific conditions for giving the green light. First, risk mutualization, Amailai, the sharing among all member states of potential losses or compensation resulting from future judicial decisions. Secondly, concrete guarantees that if those funds were to be returned in the future, each country would contribute to the coverage and the cost would not fall solely on Belgium. Finally, all frozen Russian assets in the EU, not just those held in Brussels, would be used to prevent some states from remaining in the shadows while others shoulder the political and legal burden of the operation. Behind these requests is the awareness that if the EU were to openly violate the principle of sovereign immunity, it would set a dangerous precedent. Other countries in the future might hesitate to deposit their capital in Europe for fear that it could be seized and used at discretion in the event of a political crisis. Despite these risks, some major governments such as those of France and Germany are pushing to proceed, anyway convinced that time is running out. Ukraine urgently needs funds, and the prospect of issuing new Eurobonds is facing strong resistance in many member states concerned about their public finances. In this context, the seizure of Russian assets is presented as the only viable option, but Belgium's opposition and widespread doubts about legal compatibility and financial stability make an agreement difficult. A fundamental question remains: to what extent is the Union willing to risk its legal and financial reliability to support Kiev, and what this choice will mean for Europe's role in global markets in the years to come?